This spirit, though, is meaning it's a defining characteristic. This is who you are. When you have the spirit of jealousy, that's who you are. You are jealousy right that moment. When you have the spirit of anger, you are anger at that moment. When you have the spirit of lust, you are lust. This is now who you are. That's why it's such a problem. It's your intrinsic nature. By the way, it can be good. You can be filled with shalom. And what dominates is peace and shalom. You can be filled with joy. You can be filled with integrity. You see, it's not always bad. But it's which choice do you make as far as, let me say it again. It depends on which one you choose to embrace as your intrinsic nature. Well, what did he breathe in? The breath of life. And that's the word neshama. And you hear, if you ever listen to the Orthodox teach an awful lot about the neshama of man. And the neshama of man, it actually has the idea of being the vital breath or divine inspiration or intellect. It also can be defined as wind or a puff, but in this case it's the puff or the wind of life. So the vital piece was breathed into us. And I believe it's at that moment that also a piece or connecting point of the Ruach of Elohim was breathed into you. And I believe that this is where man receives that vital spark and is given the ability to choose and make decisions. That's what makes us so different. Most of the other creatures on the planet do everything by instinct. Okay? It's built into them where to fly, where to swim, where to eat, what to do, how to function. Nobody has to teach them to do anything. They just do what they were designed to do. No instruction necessary. Us, if we got no instruction, we'd still be laying there in the swaddling clothes just like, right? We need to be instructed. Evil is not defined just as they were raping, pillaging, murdering, and doing all that other stuff, and stealing. No, evil means breaking any commandment, doing anything that goes against the order that was put into the universe by the Creator. The universe is designed to function in Torah. And so when you do anything that goes against the design, it's called evil. And it says that in many places where you can see that evil is not limited to raping, pillaging, murdering, and all that other stuff, although that stuff is obviously evil. So I'm not diminishing that, but realize it's not limited to that. If you break the Sabbath, it's evil. You eat pork, it's evil. All those things that go against what Yahweh said is defined scripturally as evil. By the way, as a parent, you know you've had these conversations with your children because your children end up in disaster after disaster. You keep saying to them, why won't you just listen to me? And they're like, because it goes against my nature. I just want to do what I want to do. And you know what? Some of us are 40, 50, and 60, and we haven't changed. We just feel more entitled to do that. Because we have this intrinsic nature, the me, I, and that's the old man has got to get buried. Bury that me, I person. And start walking and embracing his intrinsic nature. So when a spirit is trying to say it's okay, and I've talked to people like this who say, I had a confirmation from the spirit that I could eat pork. Really? That goes against his intrinsic nature, wrong spirit. So when it says prove the spirits, how do you do it? You hold it up against his intrinsic nature. What is his nature? I am Yahweh, I change not. He's righteous when there is no other righteous. That means he always does what is right. So that means that if he's ever said something is wrong, it's always wrong. If he ever said something's right, it's always right. So now he can't be telling you it's okay to do something he already told you was wrong. So you can't say that he, and somehow it's congruent with his nature, and his intrinsic nature would tell you it's okay now to break a commandment or keep a pagan holy day or do whatever else that's against that would be impossible. That's against his nature. How do you know what his nature is? He gives you a book, tells you everything about his nature. Isn't that convenient? How nice. He gave us a whole book telling you what his nature is. And what does Abba want to know? He wants to know, have you purged that mindset yet? He inspired Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, to say, let this mind be in you, Philippians 2:5, that was in Messiah Yeshua, but then get that other junk out of there. Trying to be polite. all kinds of other things. I want to get stronger with this. Get that stuff out of there. And that 3-letter word screws everybody up. You have to actually let the mind be in you. You have to let it, which means you can stop it. You can prevent the whole plan yourself, at least for you. You can just decide, I'm not going to let it. Sometimes you people have asked, well, how do we know if we have an anointed, appointed teacher? Well, look for the intrinsic nature of Elohim in your teacher and make sure you have it in you so that they can recognize each other and there's a congruence there. There's 2 spirits. Again, they're not additional. We're going to find out that the Ruach HaKodesh is the spirit of truth. And the spirit of man, and especially the spirit of Hasatan, is the spirit of delusion. So there's 2 major ones battling here. Hasatan's nature and Elohim's nature. The spirit of truth from Elohim, the spirit of delusion from Hasatan. We're told by the truth that there will be those who are going to mislead us, that are going to, in the latter times, cause people to fall away from belief because they're going to pay attention to these misleading intrinsic natures, mindsets, misleading attitudes. And so we're going to get people saying, oh, don't do that where you are. The answer is over here. Come over here. We've got the real stuff. It's a lot easier. You don't have to do all that Torah stuff and everything. All you got to do is make an altar call. Bang. Money's just going to come out of your belly button. Okay? Whatever it is, you're going to get people trying to pull you because they're allowing these other spirits to lead. These are teachings of demons. It's the emotional state that they feed on. And so they're going to encourage you through what it says here, teachings of demons, which mislead you away from the truth so that you spend your life stuck in these terrible emotional spaces. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but I'm hoping you're listening. So when you want to worry about demons, demons are not possessing you like in the movies and taking you and controlling you like an automaton and making you do stuff. Oh no, they're finding the stuff you already like to do, and those are the different demons latch on you than latch on me because we have different problems. And so when I'm walking around and let's say I walk around in anger and you walk around in depression, well, you got different demons that love to feed on depression, and I got ones that love to feed on anger. And they're going to keep encouraging you to stay in that state because that's what they feed on. And they want you to stay in that place. And guess what? When you go and change your intrinsic nature and that casts them out, they're not happy. If you habitually, remember we talked about destinies being formed, we start out with thoughts. Thoughts end up having emotions attached to them. Those emotions then manifest with the thought together an action. The actions over time form a habit. Habits form a destiny. Well, guess what? If you're going to habitually develop these actions that change your whole nature to that nature, you're basically searing your conscience. Because to do when you already know better, to do what you shouldn't do, your conscience is going to keep yelling at you unless you sear it so it shuts up. Now you become numb or seared to that thought process, and now you've convinced yourself, this is really the problem with Christianity, that doing wrong is okay. Because after all, that stuff was seared away. That was done away with. It's okay to do all those things because after all, we've already decided that we don't want to have our conscience bother us anymore. If you can get yourself congruent and you come into that vertical alignment and you resonating in the same resonance with the Father that, hey, you don't have to worry about anything. It'll just flow. The Ruach, the Spirit, which we will read about at some point, it says one of its roles is to bring to remembrance, to stir up in your mind what you already have put in there. Because after all, if you're already vertically aligned, if you're already congruent in your intrinsic nature, it's in there. If you were his children, what defines children? Not bloodline, not genealogy, it's the intrinsic nature. If you have Abba's intrinsic nature, you're a child of the living Elohim. In other words, if you have his spirit in you, that defines you as his child. He said, if you were Abraham's, you would have Abraham's spirit. You'd have his nature. Abraham wouldn't behave like you guys. If we want the pure, unadulterated word, we've got to get the filters out. You know what filters? Hasatan puts a filter, and we put our own filters. And those are the things that spin what we read and what we understand to our best advantage that makes it to be what we want it to be. That makes it be how we want it to be. You couldn't see that because your whole intrinsic nature was so that you could only filter through what your actual nature was at that moment. So you can only see through the glasses of your nature. And so you can't see all the things of Elohim until you get your nature to be of Elohim. Wow. I didn't think of that until just now. Isn't that a powerful thought? You really want to know the things of Elohim? You need to change your nature to Elohim, because there's stuff that you'll never receive and can't receive until you change your nature.